Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Cody.
And this is the RPG Rundown. In this video, we're going to go over a technique I came up with which hopefully makes it easier to write a whole new Pantheon for your D&D setting. It's one of the most intimidating things to me when I'm starting to create my own homebrew setting. It's easy to limit the scope of what you're trying to do when you're just starting out with a setting. You can maybe make one city, but the city is large enough and detailed enough that your whole campaign can take place there. And maybe you don't worry about what the rest of your world is like just yet. And then you naturally branch out from that as the game continues. Maybe you create some new area, you come up with some new political conflict, and you expand on the landscape you put down. But what do you do about a Pantheon? You kind of have to have the whole thing up front, so any cleric or paladin player characters can choose who their patron deity is. Or even regular characters who want a chance at resurrection and know which deity they're going to visit when they die. It's important to them too. And of course, it's important to the culture of your setting. In D&D, depending on the way you're running it, but generally, religion is real in that gods are real and divine magic is real. And they do interact with your characters inside the game in a very quote-unquote real way. I know that my issue when creating a Pantheon has been that overwhelm of just needing to come up with enough gods to cover all the domains that a cleric would need, for example. But I've come up with a way that I think is pretty handy for brainstorming these ideas. And I've written about it on the blog of our parent company, Game Talk Network. In this video, we're going to have Coty try it out. He hasn't read the article, so he's doing this completely fresh.
Keeping it spoiler-free.
Keeping it spoiler-free for Coty. This is very exciting for him because this is about to be revealed what we're doing here. I've given him this worksheet. Go ahead and flip it over. What this is, just as a starting point, it is every possible combination of two domains. Now, you don't need to fill all of these out. You probably don't want that many gods in your setting, but the idea is to look at the domain combinations and see if they spark new ideas for you. I'll get just a name or a symbol in my mind, or sometimes I'll get a description, whatever it is. Now, don't feel like you have to fill in every row. Again, just anything that sparks an idea when you look at these combinations. Some of these are going to be domains you never thought of combining, and they might give you kind of a cool little idea. What you do is, for every line where something sparks an idea for you, you fill in any of the columns. Don't have to fill in all of them. You can if you want to, but this phase is just about generating the ideas. So you can put a name in, you can put a symbol in, you could decide what their alignment is, and a little description.
Yeah, there's definitely some interesting choices on here. Some of them are what you would find in a lot of scenarios, kind of like life and nature, like, you know, kind of a druidic type look at it, death and war. That's a pretty good combo. So there's kind of different levels, even in just this this little sheet that you've written out, that you can go any direction, or you can kind of just keep it simple if you wanted to start off with something a little more simplistic that's kind of already done before, but it has your own little spin on it, kind of thing. I do like on here death and nature, that one particularly, because usually when you think of nature, it's like life, like plants, like going, you know, the green in the leaves and stuff like that. But the circle of life is a circle, and death is on there. So
death is part of nature.
I might choose that one because and death kind of sparks nature. So let's start with that one.
Great. So do you have a name for it or description? Thoughts on who this god might be?
Naming, I think we need to come up with a video that's just for naming things. That's one of the hardest parts ever.
It really can be. And you could use a name generator or something, an online name generator, to find something that sounds Greek or Roman or vaguely Elvish.
Yeah. I think we're going to go, because the stereotypical thought is like death in nature would be like thorn bushes and poisons and stuff like that, poisonous plants. Let's do something a little easy on the naming, and we'll do thorn, but we'll do it with an E.
Nice.
Kind of give my little GW spin on it.
Now in the brainstorming phase, it is time to capture any of the other columns that pop into your mind right away, but now is not the time to try to strain to fill them in. Only if something pops into your mind like thorn did.
Yeah. Tempest War is another really cool one because that can fill some of the fantasy tropes of the barbarian or the fighter that wants to die in like combat. Like there's like an honor in it, like it's your tempest and dying in war. So it could be easy, it could be simplistic, but you could also get a little more. You could go a little more complex with it, but you could tie it in with quite a few different classes that you're running, that your characters might choose. So we're going to go with that one as well, but we have to think of a name.
You don't need to fill the name out just yet, but having something in one of the columns would be good.
Yeah.
Even if it's just what alignment you think they might be. If you don't have something now, maybe put a check mark by it.
Yeah,
we'll come back in the next process, post-brainstorming.
We're going to put a shield.
There you go.
The honorable thing, to protect. I am illiterate. I think knowledge and war would be another really cool one, because I think going from Sun Tzu's Art of War, a lot of it in there is not necessarily just about fighting war.
True.
So that could be a cool spin-off that you could creatively put in there. So
yeah.
We'll do that one, and I'll, Sun, we'll put Soul, and I think Soul's good.
Sure.
SOL.
Yeah. I like this idea of military tactics also as a way of life, or not military, martial is a better way to put it. Martial tactics kind of leading to a code and a way of life.
And you could also, on here, trickery in war could be like the good and evil side of it, where, this is about knowledge, this is about trickery and deceiving your opponent. So that's another good one.
So you've identified archenemy gods too through this process, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. We'll do, since that's Soul, we just got to be a little stereotypical, and trickery war is going to be Loon for Luna.
I like that you are embracing the first thing that comes to mind for these names, because they don't have to be permanent.
Yeah.
But there is absolutely nothing wrong. Hey, this is fantasy gaming. A god of nature called Thorn is great. We love it. Don't strain yourself too much to try to come up with some amazing, Greek cognate or whatnot. Don't overthink it. Could be an official slogan for D&D, as a matter of fact.
Right.
It's D&D. Don't overthink it.
Yeah. There's enough thinking involved.
Right.
Going on the kind of feuding gods, we could also just go, it's going to take us a little bit into that more stereotypical realm of life and nature with death and nature, but maybe they're not so much against each other as they kind of work in succession to each other. So what's a good life? I'm not feeling particularly creative, so I'm just going to pull up a name generator to get things moving.
Nothing wrong
That's
with
how
that.
I name all of my NPCs. Clovara.
I want to point something out too, that if you're having trouble with the pairs of domains, but you just happen to notice one domain that really jumps out at you, like trickery, for example, and you just feel something for that, strike through the paired domain and feel free to do one for just one domain. Likewise, if there's one that seems like it needs a third domain, you can put it in there. The point of the dyads is they tend to spark ideas more than single domain names. They're simpler than a triplicate of domains.
Yeah.
But they may give you ideas to do a single domain or a triple domain guide.
So you have like shallow ideas for some of these.
That's great. Don't judge your ideas. This is brainstorming. What you want to wind up with is one neutral or good god, at least, that covers each of the domains so that clerics and paladins have the choice of the domain that they want in your campaign. So as long as you've done that, you have a complete enough pantheon to get started. Traditional?
We'll do life and light to keep it a little more traditional and agnostic for any kind of system. So
Sure.
Let's give a check mark for that, and then we'll do 5. And the symbol is going to be a star, a classic 5-pointed star that kind of points to some of the other feuding gods. See, just looking at this list kind of sparks some stuff.
Coty is already entering phase 2 of this exercise, which is where you now fill in the gaps that you do kind of have to think about that aren't coming automatically. And I'd say doing a fine job at that.
And that's showing that it's kind of working, because it really kind of gets the creative juices flowing. All right, so here's what I've come up with. I chose 5 categories for now. We've got, starting from the top, we've got Cathatel, the domain of life and light, kind of going for the stereotypical, like, holy, healing and just kind of miracles, stuff like that. So it's going to be a lawful, good, aligned deity. Their symbol is the star, because since I chose 5, I kind of got the idea of making like a 5-pointed star, whereas other fantasy settings have kind of done like 6-point stars, 8-point stars, and each circle of their pantheon kind of pointed to one of the gods in their pantheon. In Cathatel, I'm choosing to be kind of like the god of gods in this sense. The next on the list, I'm going with Lune, the god of trickery and war domain. They are going to be a chaotic evil, because they fight dirty, they trick their opponents on a larger or smaller scale. Their followers tend to not be very good people, and it happens to be the nemesis on one of the other gods on the other side of the star, Sol. So it's Sol's nemesis. For their symbol, I chose dagger, because that's kind of the stereotypical deceit. I might come up with something a little cooler and more creative later on, but yeah, thinking of backstabbing or something like that, chose dagger.
Shinobi priests, maybe.
Yeah. I decided not to do Tempest War. I might come back around to that, and that's the good thing about this is, none of this is permanent. You can always add to it, but we're just doing 5 for now. I'll come back to Tempest War later on in my own time. That brings us to Thorn, the goddess of death and nature. It's chaotic good in its alignment, because most people think that death, is an evil thing, but, nature requires death and decay to bring forward more life, but death is kind of chaotic, so its following tends to err on the side of the chaotic good alignment, where they know the necessity, but it's still kind of tragic and chaotic and uncertain. So that's what I wrote in my notes here. It's thought to be evil inherently, but it's necessary for life. For this one, I chose a black rose, because we'll get to it later in Clovara's. I'll explain that when we get to this one. And then now to Clovara, the goddess of life and nature. It's going to be a neutral good, because life can sometimes be good, or in a very specific scenario, like an invasive species or something, life's not necessarily good. So one's life can, drastically alter another's. Mm-hmm. For this symbol, I chose a red rose, because the theme I'm kind of going with for this is like a yin and a yang, almost, with Thorn, the goddess of death and nature. So that's just an example of kind of like having it on a sheet here, where you got to fill it out. Like, it feels like homework, but at the same time, it kind of gets things going. So I do like that. Thought to be all good. So mass following. So it's the more popular following for like the druids, and the more nature-minded civilizations. They tend to follow her more closely than her counterpart Thorn, because Thorn is death, and death is scary. All right, and lastly, we've got Sol, the god of knowledge and war, which is the direct nemesis to Lune, who I talked about earlier. Their alignment is true neutral, because war is inherently bad, but in a lot of fantasy scenarios, you're going to find that it's kind of like the lesser of two evils. There might be an evil thing that you have to go to war with. So it's true neutral. Its followers tend to be more lawful good, but overall, true neutral is what I went for. And that one, I stole my Tempest, and I just did a shield, because for it to be a good scenario, it should probably be for protection reasons only, because war is, bad, usually. The descriptions are a little brief on these two, but they're just nemesis of each other. One's fighting kind of more in an honorable way, and one's fighting in more of a deceitful way, so they're naturally enemies.
Cool. Good job.
Thanks.
So tell us your thoughts. Did you think this was a good system? Did you find it useful? Is there anything you would change about it?
I thought it was good. You know, you don't really think about it like you get ideas when you're coming up with this kind of stuff. You get ideas that kind of pop into your head, and then you might not remember to write them down, and then you forget about them. They change and stuff like that. But this is a good way to kind of have it organized in front of you and to cover all of your bases. On a paper form, you know, you kind of run out of space because, like with these two right here, you know, I kind of already just having it in paper in front of me just kind of got those wheels turning, got it to where like, oh yeah, and they can do this, and they'll not really be enemies, but at the same time they will, and the yin and the yang kind of thing just coming. Like, we've only been doing this for like 15 minutes now, and I've already kind of got 5 pantheons, or 5 gods in a pantheon.
Yeah, great. So of course you would want to fill out, as I said before, enough to have all of the domains available. And generally you want a couple of choices per domain that are not evil, unless you're playing an evil campaign, then that's a whole other kettle of fish.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for watching the video. Leave us a comment below if you try the system out. Tell us if it worked for you, what you think, suggestions you have for changing or enhancing it. And as always, we love it when you like and subscribe. It helps us out, and it's free to you to do. Until next time, I'm Dave.
I'm Cody.
This has been the RPG Rundown.